All rise. Please be seated.
Please, Your Honors. When we adjourned, Mr. Taylor, you were dealing with the period you spent as a teacher at the junior high school in Arthington. How long did you stay there?
Excuse me a second, Your Honors. May I just ask Your Honors for permission to have a plain sheet of paper to, is that permissible?
Yes. Madam Court Attendant, something to write with as well.
Please. Thank you very much. Yes.
How long did you stay there in Arthington?
I was in Arthington for 1 year.
And thereafter, what happened?
I decided that I had to further my education and that I needed to do something else in addition to the teaching. So the following year, I moved to the capital city, Monrovia, continued my teaching program, but also enrolled in, at that time, what was called an extension program. There was something like a semi-college program through an extension university in the United States called LaSalle, some may call it, Extension University, where there was something like what we call a corresponding course in accounting while teaching.
Pause there. Let's try and unravel some of that, please. First of all, can you assist us as to what year it was that you moved to Monrovia?
1969.
Secondly, you said that you continued teaching. Where were you teaching?
The city of Monrovia had a special program. I think it was a program, and I stand corrected on this one. I think it was the Michigan, as Michigan, the United States, had a special program with the Ministry of Education, and they had what they term a consolidated school system. All of the junior and senior high schools within the vicinity of Monrovia came under a special program where special schools were built, special programs were launched to help the nation. I was accepted as a teacher in that program. It was called the Monrovia Consolidated School System.
MCSS?
That is correct.
And what subject did you teach?
Math again. I was basically a math and science teacher.
And where the school at which you taught, where was that located?
That school was located on Newport Street in Monrovia.
Is that NEWPORT?
That is correct.
And your students, what age bracket did they fall into?
Now we have a little different, what we call a different kettle of fish here. Mixed. I would say it was mixed. We are now in Monrovia, so you have some fortunate students that are of high school age and junior high school age. I would put their ages in the junior high program at the regular age, that would be what, 12, 13, 14, because senior high in Liberia ends roughly, if you're lucky, at the age of 18. And so I would put it to about 13, 12, 13.
And help us. At that time, bearing in mind we're talking about 1969, who was president of Liberia?
Oh, at that particular time, we still had, Tubman was still around.
And you said you enrolled on a course, yes?
Yes.
And can you help us with the spelling of the name of the, I think you called it an extension university at which you enrolled for a correspondence course.
Well, some people may say Seoul, Sal, depending on the English American part. It's L-A, and then you have S-A-L-L-E, what's called the La Salle Extension University.
And what was the course that you were pursuing with them?
It was a course in accounting.
And help us, you say it was a correspondence course. Explain to us what you mean.
You registered in this program, you paid for the course, they will send you via mail all of the material. You will study the material, and they will send you the examinations. You had to fill in these different materials, send them back. It was just something like, I would call it a long-distance teacher. We didn't do the exams by telephone. You had to write, fill in all. They would send the questionnaires, you fill in them and send them back. It was this push-pull situation.
And what was the course that you were studying?
Accounting.
And how were you supporting yourself at that time, Mr. Taylor?
I was still teaching at the MCSS.
And did you have any other employment at the time?
Yes. I had gotten a part-time job at the finance ministry in the Bureau of General Accounting, and this is what really encouraged me to do this program. So I had 2 jobs trying to make ends meet.
And help us. In due course, did you complete the course with La Salle University?
I completed the course. Lucky for me, yes, I did.
And how many years did it take to complete it?
Oh, that program lasted for about 2 years, between 69 and 70.
And then what did you do?
The death of President Tubman occurred. President Talbot took over. His brother, the late Stephen Talbot, was appointed finance minister. In an attempt to upgrade the Ministry of Finance, he decided to give an exam in the Ministry of Finance to begin a new system of qualifying those that he wanted to use. I took the examination and along with another gentleman made a very high score. And then I was taken on full-time as a junior accountant in the ministry.
And how long did you stay in that post?
Up until 1972.
And what occurred in 1972 to change that?
All along, I was really working and trying to improve myself because I wanted to advance my education. And this is a little funny story, but I think it helped. I was dating a girl, and this old school friend of mine had come back from the United States with a master's degree and took the girl from me. And so I said, oh my God, I have to go to school. This is just too much for me. I then decided that I had to go to America to extend my, well, that's not the only thing, but I mean, this really pushed me because this guy came back boasting he had a master's, and we went to Rick's Institute together. And he comes back and he takes this girl from me, and so I said, well, okay, then I'm just going to have to speed up this trip to America, because with the 2 jobs that I had in Liberia, I could not attend university. There was just no way to attend university. So I then applied through a friend who had the address of a junior college in the United States, Chamberlain. That's Chamberlayne in Boston, Massachusetts, for admissions. And I worked very hard and saved some little money to go to continue my college education.
What year was it when you left?
I left in 1972.
And how did you finance your flight tickets?
I worked, saved a little bit of money, but it was not sufficient. Now, the director of the Bureau of General Accounting, the late Danlett, that's D-A-N-L-E-T-T-E, Danlett Tucker, liked me a whole lot because I was very hardworking. And she had a very good friend who is now late also, sadly, by the name of Victor Heichel. That Heichel, I think, is H-A Heichel, H-I-C-K-E-L, I think he spells it, Heichel. He volunteered and bought me the ticket to go to study in the United States. That's how I got there.
Now, if I could pause for a moment and provide 2 spellings. Tubman, Mr. President, William V.S. Tubman, T-U-B-M-A-N, President of Liberia, 1944 to 1971, and William R. Tolbert, Jr., T-O-L-B-E-R-T, President of Liberia, 1971 to 1980. Now,
Mr. Griffiths, I'll leave it entirely to you, but I see your client's writing something there. You might want to inform yourself what is being written, because, of course, it's open to inspection by others.
I'm grateful for that indication, Your Honor. Now, help me with this. Who was President of the United States when you arrived there in 1972?
Oh, 72. Oh, it was Richard Milhock. I think it's called Nixon.
I think we know who you're talking about, so don't worry.
Tricky Dick.
And where in the United States did you travel on arrival?
First went into Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to see a cousin of mine down there.
Pause there and help us with this. At that time, was there a major sporting event occurring?
Yes, as I flew through Europe, that was the time of the Munich Olympic. I can remember that. And the news at that time, sadly, what was top on the news, the Israeli unit, sports, I think the wrestlers had been captured by some terrorists at that time and were being held. That was the major news at that time.
So any event you go, and what was your point of entry into the United States?
First into New York and then on to Philadelphia.
And your ultimate destination was what?
Boston, Massachusetts.
And you've already mentioned Chamberlain College. What kind of a college was that?
It was a junior college, a 2-year program.
And what were you intending to study?
accounting.
How long did you stay in Philadelphia before moving to Boston?
Not very long. I I arrived in Philadelphia to see my cousins, and I probably spent a few weeks there because I left from Liberia somewhere in July. School had to open in September, and if I intended to be at Chamberlain, I had to be there at the beginning of school in September. So I stayed around in Philadelphia for a few weeks before going on to Boston.
Now, when you arrived in Boston, did you have the money to pay your school fees?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
So what happened?
As with most students during that time, and I'm sure it's still happening now, when you're very hungry, as we were at that time for education, we took chances. I went. In fact, Chamberlain was of the, they knew that I did not have all of the money, and so they gave me a job. I washed dishes and cleaned floors at the college to help to meet the fees for the first year, while at the same time I was trying to make contact with Liberians that were in the Boston area to see if I could get some help also.
And did you get any?
Yes, I did.
From whom?
A cousin of mine, Edwin Holder, had been in,
Spelling?
that's Edwin as in Edwin Holder, Holder, Holder.
And what help did he provide?
The college wanted to help, and they did help, but the problem was they could no longer keep me on the campus. So they were confronted with the issue, well, you can continue to work here, but there's one thing to give you money that you pay your school fees, but the dormitory fees are different. And so they had waived that part of the program, but they had told me that, listen, you can work here and whatever little money you make will apply it to the fees, but unless you're able to pay for your room and board, we have to throw you out. So his contribution was in finding someone in the Boston area that I could live with, and he did.
And who was that?
Another gentleman by the name of Edwin Lewis. That's Lewis, Lewis.
Now, did there come a time when you graduated from Chamberlain College?
Yes, I graduated 2 years. I was a junior college program in May of 1974. I graduated with an associate degree in accounting.
And what did you decide to do at that point?
At that particular point, I decided to get a full degree. Through the grace of God, I did very well. I tried to enter Boston, Massachusetts is on one side of the Charles River in Massachusetts, and right across the Charles River, there are two of the best known institutions in the world. Immediately across the Charles River is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, followed by Harvard. That's Harv, not Howard. Harvard University. I tried to enter the business school at Harvard. I could not, so the next best business school I could get into, because my grades were good, was Bentley. And that's Bentley, Bentley College, in a town just outside of Boston called Waltham. That's Waltham, Waltham, Massachusetts. I was accepted at the business school there to pursue a degree again in accounting.
And when did you start that particular course?
Immediately thereafter. I graduated in '74. By September, I entered Bentley in the accounting program.
And did you remain with the accounting program?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Accounting got boring for me, really. But while at the college, I developed an interest in economics, and I was really informed by a famous economist, W. Rostow, I think it was R-O-S-T-O-W, Rostow, and his whole theory on development economics called the Big Push. And then I transferred, because it's a business school, the accounting program, economics, management, is all a big business school, so transferring from one program to the other was not very difficult, so I transferred to the economic program and specialized in development economics.
And in due course, did you graduate?
Yes, I obtained a BSc degree in economics with emphasis in development.
And how long did it take you to graduate?
It took me in the full 2 years again. It was just a continuation of the associate program. So you went in from year 3, and you did 3 and 4.
And why did you decide to take up development economics?
I was always interested really in politics, but I didn't really want to do political science, but I wanted to be in a position where I could help. After I look back at my childhood years and all of the difficulties that I had, having to go to teachers training and go to the United States and watch flows and wash dishes and all that kind of stuff, I really wanted to do development economics where I could return to Liberia and be of some help to our people, especially being informed by the theory that had been developed by Rostow. It was a very interesting theory, and I felt that utilizing that particular theory in the Liberian setting would help a whole lot.
And at this stage, Mr. Taylor, did you have any political ambitions?
Oh, definitely, I had.
And what was that?
Well, I was interested in returning after seeing the Tupman years pass, the one party, and then Torba coming in with a little different touch to it. Torba was more development oriented, and seeing the need to help our people, I saw myself in the future as being a part of a government that would help to enable our people.
That helped me. How did you finance yourself through Bentley College?
While I was after I obtained my associate degree in accounting, I was lucky to get a job with a plastic company. It was a very nice man in a very, at that time, bad part of Boston. It's called South Boston. This was a time when this was at the height of the school desegregation in the Massachusetts area, and South Boston was.
Can I pause you for a moment because I'm looking at the transcript. What part of Boston did you say?
South, S-O-U-T-H, South.
Thank you. Go on.
South Boston. Max Greenbaum, that's Greenbaum, Greenbaum, a very nice man, gave me a job in the plastic factory. They made cellophane plastic bags, and I worked there, and he was a very generous man of my faith. He was Jewish, and he permitted me to do my university and put in time to fill in the lost hours.
And how many hours a week did you work?
I had to do the full 40 hours a week. and it was a little hard on me, but because I was a foreign student, the law in the United States, in fact, we were not permitted. It's not permitted with a student visa to work for 40 hours, but if you are not doing full-time university on a student visa, the immigration will throw you out. So I needed the money to pay my school fees, so I had to do full-time university and full-time job.
And where were you living at the time?
I was living in an area of Boston called Roxbury. That's a predominantly black neighborhood in Boston.
And were you living by yourself?
For a time, yes, but it later changed.
How?
Well, I met this nice lady, and we lived together for some time.
What was her name?
Bernice, B-U-R-N-I-C-E, her last name Emmanuel, E-M-M-A-N-U-E-L.
What was her origins?
Well, she was an American citizen, but originally from Trinidad and Tobago.
And for how long did you live with her?
We were together for, about, let's say 3-4 years.
Did you have any children with her?
Yes, we had one son.
What's his name?
He's Charles Jr.,
Also known as?
Chucky.
Was he your first child?
No, he was not. He was my second.
Who's your first child?
My first daughter is Zoe. Some people call it Zoe. Zoe Taylor.
And who's her mother?
Her mother is Honorine Clark.
Spell that, please.
That's Honnerine, last name Clarke.
And where was Zoe born?
She was born in Liberia, in Bummy Hills.
Is that before you left to go to the United States?
That is correct.
And where is Zoe now?
Zoe is in Liberia right now. She lives in Liberia.
And of course we know where Chucky is now, don't we?
I've learned since my incarceration that he was charged in the United States with torture, and he's in prison, I understand.
Now, did you ever marry Chucky's mother?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Oh, during those days, and even now, what they call that in French, cohabitation. We cared about each other. We were living together and cared very deeply, but sadly it just did not get to that point.
So, did there come a time when that relationship came to an end?
Yes, it did.
And did you thereafter remain single?
For a while, yes. Remained single, but I met another lady that I married about a year later.
And what was her name?
Well, her name is Enid, that's E-N-I-D, middle name Tupi, T-U-P-E-E, Taylor. And
what was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Boykai, that's B-O-I-K-A-I.
And you say you married her in what year?
I married her in 1980, to be exact.
And were you living in the Boston area throughout this time?
Are you referring to the time that we got married or before?
Well, let's take it in stages. First of all, whilst you were with Bernice.
Yes, I remain in the Boston area.
By the time you got married to Tupi, where were you living?
In Liberia. I was on a trip to Liberia when we got married in 1980.
Well, we come back to that in due course. Now, you've mentioned to date dealing with Bentley College and graduating from there. Now, during the course of that relationship with Bernice, did you continue to study?
Yes, I did.
At what institution?
Following my graduation from Bentley, I enrolled in the master's degree program at New Hampshire College in Manchester, New Hampshire, adjoining state to the state of Massachusetts.
In what year was that?
That was in 1978, 77, the 77-78 program. And let me tell you what I mean by 77-78 program. The school term, I've been in jail now 3 years. I don't know what it is in America, and maybe it's changed, and I probably be questioned on it by the prosecutor. September is the beginning at that time of the school year. It runs, it ends, it starts up again in January, and it runs to June. So when I say the 77-78 school year, I mean September 77 going into May of 78, that's one school year.
And what was the program upon which you'd enrolled?
I enrolled in an MBA program with emphasis in organizational development and behavior, OBOD. This is an MBA program. The general MBA program is more like a management program that I went into, but my emphasis was in organizational development, okay, and behavior, OBOD.
How did you finance that?
Upon graduating from Bentley, I got a job with the Liberty Mutual Insurance Company in downtown Boston as a reinsurance personnel.
And did that provide the finance for the course?
Yes, it did. It helped me substantially. I didn't have to do 2 jobs. That one job was sufficient.
And did you complete the MBA?
No, I did not. I spent 1 year in the MBA program, and I had to withdraw because of my trip to Liberia at the beginning of 1980.
And just briefly for now, what was the nature and purpose of that trip to Liberia in January 1918?
In 1979, there was a major problem in Monrovia. President Talbot, 78, 79, there was a race riot. Some individuals, several Liberians were killed. I had then risen to the level of chairman of a Liberian organization in the United States.
I'll come to the details of that in a moment. But just deal for now with the purpose of your trip to Liberia in early 1918.
To speak with President Talbot in helping to bring about a change in the country.
And at the time you made that trip, were you still on the MBA program?
Yes. I had to withdraw, though. I was still an MBA student.
You had to withdraw. Why?
The planning process in going to Liberia took some time. And that time involved me moving throughout the United States. And I just could not continue the program, so I withdrew to take care of this Liberian problem, and upon returning, re-entered the program.
And how long were you intending to go to Liberia for at that stage?
Oh, a very short time. It was not intended to be long. We went in January, but it ended up longer than we anticipated.
And it's whilst there on that trip, was it, bearing in mind what you've told us earlier, that you got married to Tupi?
That is correct.
We'll come to the details of that a little later. But help us with this. You mentioned an organization of Liberians with which you were involved. What was the name of that organization?
It was called the Union of Liberian Associations in the Americas, ULAA, ULA.
And when was that organization founded?
In 1972.
And were you involved in the process of founding the organization?
That is correct. I was one of the founders of the organization.
And what was the objective of the organization?
By the time I get to the United States in 72, there are approximately 60, 70,000 Liberians in the United States. They have local organizations called chapters throughout the United States. I saw a need, along with others, to bring those chapters together in order for us to have an impact on the political scene in Liberia. I realized that we had to come together and not stay disorganized, speaking with different voices.
Come together for what?
In order to make, to influence change in Liberia. They were all trying to influence changes in Liberia.
What kind of change?
Political change, democratic change, peaceful political democratic change. And remember now, we are coming out of the Tubman era. We are now newly entering the Talbot era. And so there's an opportunity now to try to influence the process. And that's the whole engagement at this time.
And tell me, what position or positions did you hold within the organization?
I finally became the chairman of the entire organization, the chairman.
And how was the organization set up? Help us with the hierarchy, the internal structure.
Each state had its own chapter and its own president.
And were you ever the president of a chapter?
Yes, I served as the president of a chapter.
Which chapter?
The Massachusetts chapter.
And for how long did you serve in that role?
I was president for about 3 years.
And then you were telling us about the structure of ULAA?
Mm-hmm. Now, what ULA became was an umbrella organization that all of the chapters subscribed to. And each chapter would elect individuals to represent that chapter to a national umbrella organization. And that organization itself would then elect its leadership. That would be the head of the entire organization, including the branches.
And did you ever fill that role?
Yes, I was the national chairman.
And was that following an election process, nomination, or what?
An election process. Within the umbrella organization, it works similar to I would say, how maybe the European Parliament works. You have the member states, they elect individuals, send them to this organization, that organization elects its leadership.
And when did you become the leader of the ULAA?
In 1979, I took over the chairmanship of the union.
And was the ULAA limited to the United States?
What we say of the Americas, Canada was also included. So that's what we say, the organization of the Americas, that included Canada.
And tell me, did the organization have any kind of influence in Liberia?
Oh, we could not be ignored, I put it that way. We first started making an impact, I would really say, around the time of my chairmanship, because of the unfortunate situation that occurred. I was just, it could have been anyone as chairman at the time, but an unfortunate situation occurred, and then some prominence developed as of that time in 1979.
And what was the unfortunate situation?
We had some problems in Monrovia where some people got killed, and I was presiding over a board meeting in Washington, D.C., and the news reached us that several unarmed Liberians had been killed on the streets of Monrovia. That were peacefully demonstrating because of the price of rice.
We'll come back to that in a moment. But for now, let's go back to the organization, ULAA. Help us with some of the other individuals who were involved with the organization at the time you were chair.
Oh, we had several of them. We have at least 5 of the individuals that worked extremely closely with me. We have Blamo Nelson, that's B-L-A-M, I think it's O-H, Blamo. It's a crew name, Blamo Nelson, normal N-E-L-S-O-N. He's presently a senator in Liberia. We had an individual called Nyondue Mokomena. Now, I apologize. I really don't know how to spell Mokomena, but we're going to have to find out this. Nyondue. And it's Y-U-N-D-U-E-H, Nyondue. It's purely a crew name, Nyondue Mokomena. We have Joseph Gibro of the Crown ethnic group. That's G-B-E-R-O, Gibro. We have another Stephen Joe. By the way, Nyondue Mokomena eventually became Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Republic of Liberia. We also had Tom Wowiyu, that's spelled W-O-W-E-I-Y-U, Tom Wowiyu. These were all senior people. We also have another Bai Bala, that's B-A-I, and the last name is spelled G-B-A-L-A, Bai Bala. We also had another individual called Moses Duopu, D-U-O-P-U, Duopu. These are all Liberians and many more that were involved with the union at that particular time at various high levels.
Now, how was the ULAA funded?
Chapters contributed to the umbrella organization.
And were officials of the organization paid?
No. We were not paid.
As chair of the organization, were you based in any particular place?
I was still based in Boston, but it involved a lot of travel, so I was always on the move.
And who paid for the travel?
Oh, I had to pay for it myself.
And you were traveling for what purpose?
Organizational purposes, and to be clear for the judges, this travel comes back to your original question of the period of my withdrawal from my master's program going into. So we're talking about a short time of maybe about 6 months. Talbot has come to the United States. We are invited to Liberia. Now I'm going from state to state, trying to galvanize support and organizing the trip to Liberia, and making sure that all chapters were on board and that we were speaking with one voice.
And tell me, were you traveling by yourself or with anyone?
I used to travel sometimes with 1 or 2 members of the Massachusetts chapter, and they couldn't stay long because I couldn't. And this travel was mostly on the weekend, so we would zip in and zip out, because remember now, I'm working, I still have to work to earn a living. So we were running over the weekends. So between Friday and Sunday evening, a lot of flying, running to chapters. Sometimes I would have people come down to see me. So it was a very hectic time.
And could you afford all of this traveling out of what you were earning?
Oh, no, not very. I couldn't, but I had to do something because students were all students and everyone was having problems. From time to time, there will be some little contribution by individual members that, for example, those Liberians in America that were now living and working in the United States and making good money, and there were several of them who would throw in from time to time.
But was it possible for you to remain solvent?
Not really. If this had gone on very much longer.
Pardon?
Not really. If I had to do this much longer, no.
Now help us with this. We're talking about a period in American history when there was a great deal of upheaval within the African American community. So help us with this. Was there any kind of a relationship between ULAA, an organization of black Africans, and the various pressure groups within the African American community?
No, we stayed away from those organizations because here we are all students, and the United States laws are very strict. We had to register. We did not register in the United States as a lobbying group against a foreign government, which would have, I'm sure this side understands, would have constituted a crime. We registered as a student association for social purposes. And so we were very careful not to get involved with American groups because it would have probably landed a lot of our students in jail or in trouble. So we didn't.
And despite those concerns, which resulted in you not being involved in any such politics, did you ever have any brushes with any of the American authorities in your role as chair of the ULAA?
Oh, yes, I did.
Such as?
I was arrested by the FBI in 1979.
What for?
Following the rights riot in Monrovia and the killing of peaceful, unarmed citizens, I have told these judges that I'm presiding over a board meeting, and as you can imagine, tempers flare. We are so upset, and it's decided then that, look, the only way we can bring about this change that we're talking about has got to be through if citizens are not protected by the government is shooting people on the streets, so the citizens should have an opportunity to shoot back. Bad thinking, but that was the time. And so there was an attempt to try to buy some handguns to send back to Liberia to these unarmed citizens to defend themselves. And not knowing that the FBI had been listening to us, and they sent in an informer who passed himself off as someone that had handguns, and they meet to buy the guns, and they're arrested by the FBI. But I'm chairman of the organization, so I'm also, I go back to Boston, and the FBI arrest me. They do not take me to jail, but I'm summoned to appear before a grand jury in Washington.
Pause there for a minute, and we'll come back to a little bit more detail on that in a moment. But I want to pause at this stage, Mr. Taylor. I'll ask you about something else, and that is your political views. When did you start becoming interested in politics?
I would put it to around 1971, 72, right after the death of President Tubman. This urge started. We saw an opportunity to begin to make some change because there was a little crack in the Talbot style, and I started developing that particular urge.
So help us. Describe for us, please, what life was like under the Tubman regime under which you grew up.
Tubman was like a father to all of us. We were all part of the Tubman culture. And Tubman had come into office at a very crucial time and had done some important things and really felt a duty to how he dealt with the United States. Tubman was not a very highly educated individual. He had not obtained any university education. And so he depended on the United States in such a way that he was virtually subservient to the will of the United States. Tubman did speeches and took them to the United States Embassy for the ambassador to read his speeches and all this type of nonsense. So we all knew this coming. So we that period, and so his rule in Liberia, I would like to say that in so many ways, the advantage was taken of Tubman, and not trying to be negative of this man, but he was used in some very unfortunate ways.
Such as?
At the beginning of the quest for African countries, when the liberation struggle was at its zenith in Africa, when the late Kwame Nkrumah, coming home from school in the United States, I think Kwame went to Lincoln University in the United States, there was this move for African unity. You had Liberia, the oldest independent African country. You had Ethiopia, the oldest free state with an emperor. You had the struggle going on in Kenya with Kenyatta and another very good gentleman that got killed in Mboya, Tom Mboya. These names, we're going to have to get the spelling. This quest for the union to bring Africa together was being driven by Kwame Nkrumah, Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria, and that group. And there was a famous meeting held in Addis Ababa to discuss the bringing together of Africa to form a united Africa. Tubman, sadly, the West at that particular time, the United States and most Western countries, saw a united Africa as a so-called no-no, that an Africa united would be a problem for them. So they sought to undermine it, and they used Tubman to undermine the bringing together of Africa. So if you go in deep into African history, you see about the so-called Addis Conference and the Casablanca Conference. Tubman was financed by the United States to host a Monrovia Conference to divide African leaders to prevent the unity of Africa at the time. And quite strangely, that division led to the creation of ECOWAS. The charter and everything of ECOWAS was written. That divide and rule led to the OAU. It was not supposed to be OAU. It was supposed to be what? The United States of Africa at that time. And so because of that, all of us that were growing up knowing the history of that did not like it. Tubman fell out with most of his colleagues, and eventually the compromise was the OAU. And what happened to Kwame Nkrumah? He was overthrown by, we know who, by Western intelligence. So that's why the Tubman years for us, for me, was a very terrible time. And so we saw an opportunity moving from Tubman and moving into Toba as an opportunity to begin to free Liberia, and as a result, a lot of the other African states. Before I conclude this answer, during that period, Nigeria, Togo, all of these countries obtained their independence during that period, and Liberia was instrumental. And so Tubman was seen as the godfather of Africa at that particular time, and people listened to him. So once he threw this, figuratively speaking, this monkey wrench into the process, that killed the whole thing. And so I didn't like it, a lot of people did not like it, and so we tried to move away to latch on to Talbot to see if we could make that change. And I got interested in politics.
Let's move away from Tubman's foreign policy for the moment, though. Internally within Liberia, how many political parties were there during the Tubman years?
One and only one.
What was it called?
The True Whig Party, W-H-I-G, this Whig from Southern America.
And help us, for how long had the True Whig Party ruled Liberia?
Practically from the inception.
And who primarily composed the True Whig Party?
The Americo-Liberian group.
And was it legally possible to have an opposition party during the Tubman years?
No one dare try that. No, 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 no. It was not permitted.
And were the indigenous Liberians permitted to participate in the political process during the Tubman years?
The True Whig Party was the party of Liberians. If you were in Liberia, you were a true Whigger. There was no other way. So we were all true Whigger. There was not a question, would you like to join? Americo-Liberians, Aborigines, whoever, all Liberians were members of the True Whig Party.
And did that monolithic political position in Liberia have any particular impact on your family or any of your family members?
Yes. My cousin, in 1955, his name was Booker, that's B-O-O-K, Booker T. Briswell.
Spelling, please.
Bracewell, Booker T. Bracewell, along with others, Samuel David Coleman, William Horace, and others in 1955 in attempting to bring about a change by trying to challenge the True Whig Party for change were charged with treason, and most of them were killed in 1955 in a famous episode called The Plot That Failed. My cousin Booker T. Bracewell was one of those individuals killed in that process.
Now, in the latter years of his presidency, who was Tubman's vice president?
William R. Talbot, William Richard Talbot.
Now, upon Tubman's death, who took over?
His vice president, William Richard Talbot.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there was a crack, to quote, in the Talbot style. What did you mean by that?
Talbot was a little better educated. He had...
Pausing there, speaking of his education, did your father have anything in common with Talbot in terms of his education?
Yeah, they went to the same Lutheran school. Talbot went to the same Lutheran school. That was supposed to be what you call your top school in the country, one of the top schools in the country, because here you are, the Lutheran Overseas Mission. They are there, and most of the teachers are Europeans, and so this was a top school.
Now, so returning to the crack, what are you talking about?
While Talbot was vice president, he traveled extensively. Talbot became president of the Baptist World Alliance. Now, this alliance was an alliance that had its roots in the United States. I remember earlier I spoke about the Southern Baptists. The Southern Baptists is a very large, well, at that time, I'm not sure now, a very large organization. Maybe they may be evangelicals now, I don't know, but a very large. He was the president of the Baptist World Alliance and traveled extensively. And he had a lot of experience, and he had met a lot of people, and his level of education drove him to a position of wanting to effect meaningful changes in Liberia. That's that crack. So we're moving from an era where Tubman is not very sharp, very smart, and it may be wrong to say this, but it's right, it's the truth. But Talbot is a little more in tune with maybe the issues of the time and want to see some change. And we wanted to capitalize on that crack.
Thank you. Now remember, let's pause for a minute, please, and I'm helpfully assisted by my learned friend, Mr. Anya, with some spellings. Jomo Kenyatta, Jomokenyatta. Kwame Nkrumah, KwameNkrumah. And finally, Addis Ababa, Addis-Ababa. I think we're missing the name of...
Selassie was the emperor.
Yes, but there was another name you mentioned in Northern Africa.
Oh, Ahmed Ben Bella, Algeria. Ahmed, I think A-H-M-E-D, Ahmed Ben Bella.
Now, I'm endeavoring here, Mr. Taylor, to...
Tom Mboya, I think it's pretty straight.
Tom Mboya.
Tom Mboya was working, he's from Kenya. And may I just, before you move, let me mention, because in Egypt at the time, who really served very well was Gamal Abdel Nasser. He was one of the pillars of this whole African movement, Gamal Abdel Nasser.
That's what I'm coming to, Mr. Taylor, because we're talking about a period in the 60s and 70s, aren't we, of a great deal of upheaval in terms of the African continent and decolonization.
That's correct.
Now help us. Just help us with a picture of how those developments impacted upon your own political views.
Oh, imagine a Kwame Nkrumah talking about the problems of Africa and wanting to see Africa liberated, and what a very fine speaker Kwame Nkrumah was. And let me say, I heard and saw Kwame, and I just want to add here, that whole beginning also, the first meeting after Kwame Nkrumah was driving hard for the African Union occurred in Liberia, strangely, with Tubman, Kwame Nkrumah, and one other person, Sekou Touré. Now, when you
Let's pause for a minute and deal with the spelling. Sekou Touré.
Sekou as S-E-K-O-U, and Touré, I think it's T-O-U-R-E, Sekou Touré. What I'm naming, these names, I'm naming those that we call the forerunners of the desire to unite Africa. These are the forerunners. Now, listening to Kwame Nkrumah and knowing that these are our aspirations and goals also, we were driven by these discussions at that time. And, you know.
You say the first meeting was held in Liberia. Where?
Saninkole, strangely, in Saninkole, Liberia. The three little huts are still there today in Saninkole. S-A-N-N-I-Q-U-E-L-L-E, Saninkole. That's in Nimba County, Liberia.
And who met there?
President Tubman, Ahmed Sekou Touré, and Kwame Nkrumah.
And how did Kwame Nkrumah get there?
Oh, he visited Liberia. Let's not lose sight here, Your Honors, of why. Tubman, again, I mentioned here, is almost the godfather of Africa. He's been in there forever, and Liberia is the oldest independent African country who has worked for the independence of Nigeria, all of them. Tubman was instrumental in getting the independence from Britain for Nigeria and all these countries. So they all went to him as the good old man and the father. And so they all had gone to him to discuss this particular aspect of trying to see how Africa could unite.
Mm-hmm. Can I pause again and assist with some more spellings? Haile Selassie, H-A-I-L-E-S-E-L-A-S-S-I-E. Ahmed Ben Bella, A-H-M-E-D-B-E-N-B-E-L-L-A. Gamal Abdel Nasser, G-A-M-A-L, A-B-D-E-L-N-A-S-S-E-R. Now, you've mentioned Kwame Nkrumah and the effect upon you of his journey. What else was going on around Africa at the time which impacted upon you? And perhaps if we just go around the map and you can tell us.
Well, this was the time of the liberation struggle. How East Africa was moving. When I mentioned Jomo Kenyatta, most people know how Jomo Kenyatta got it. We know how Kenya got their independence. They started something similar to what you see in Sierra Leone now, what they call the Kamajoy, was the Mau Mau movement. That's how the British got out of there. They beheaded them and did all kinds of stuff. So we have that situation going on. In Southern Africa, you also have the terrible apartheid regime going on at that particular time in Southern Africa, and there's all these movements going on. If we either had war or liberation struggles going on in trying to get, so in the west of Africa, you also had what you call now Guinea-Bissau with Amal Cabral. So this was the period of liberation struggles and war, trying to break away from this stranglehold that was upon these African states. So that was the general period. In Northern Africa, we didn't have too much problem because NASA was there, but East, Southern, West Africa was all these movements going on at the time.
Now, Cabral, you mentioned, C-A-B-R-A-L. His politics, his sense of liberation was informed by Marxist-Leninism, wasn't it?
That is correct.
Now help us. Were you a Marxist-Leninist?
I resent Marxism, and this is why even some of my colleagues in Liberia, until today, we still have problems, because there was a Marxist organization. I am a pure Democrat. I believe in the capitalist structure. I've worked for it. I trained for it. No. My interest with their whole discussions at the time was the interest in having Africa break away from the stranglehold that exists until today, because let me say here, and I am a Pan-Africanist, I've always been and will always be, and this informs some of the other issues of my actions that we will come to. I'm a Pan-Africanist.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the liberation of Africa, making sure that Africans solve their own problem. We went to school with these Europeans and Americans. We made better grades than they made. They come to our countries. They sit on top of us because they have a little bit of money, as though they know it all, and they do not. I believe that Africans are capable of solving their own problems. And this is that whole Pan-African attitude that remains in me today.
Now, you mentioned earlier that your antipathy to Marxist-Leninism caused problems with some of your colleagues. Like who?
Well, there was an organization in Liberia called MOJA.
What does that stand for?
Movement for Justice in Africa. And one of the top individuals that have always had problems with me is so-called Amos Sawyer. That's the Marxist-Leninist setup that they had over there that we could not get along then and still don't get along today.
Amos Sawyer later became president of the interim government, didn't he? We'll come to the details later.
Well, Amos Sawyer was elected to run Monrovia. I'll put it that way.
Very well. Apart from Amos Sawyer, who else did you, if at all, did you have difficulties with on that ideological level?
All of the Moja people. There were several of them. You had Sawyer Moja, you had Tipote, Dr. Tipote, Moja, and quite a few others.
And where was Moja based?
Moja, I understand, had branches in West Africa. They had a Moja branch in Liberia. There may have been a Moja branch in the Gambia. There were Moja branch, I think, in Senegal, in some other countries in West Africa. But they were Ghana, to be sure. They were in Ghana. But I just didn't.
Have you ever heard of an organization called PAL?
Yes.
What does that stand for?
The Progressive Alliance of Liberia.
And what was their political ideology?
As anti-Marxist as you can imagine, around my orientation.
And who was the leader of that organization?
The leader of that organization was the late Gabriel Bacchus Matthews.
Gabriel, G-A-B-R-I-E-L?
That is correct.
Bacchus, help us with that.
B-A-R-C-U-S. And
Matthews.
Matthews, M-A-T-T-H-E-W-S with an S.
Now, Bacchus Matthews, was he involved in any other organization or political party apart from PAL?
Bacchus Matthews was involved with ULA, the Union of Liberian Associations in the Americas, prior to his return to Liberia.
And when he returned to Liberia, did he establish any grouping there?
Yes. When Bacchus returned to Liberia, that was around 1978. I'm virtually sure. Bacchus decided to engage the system. By engaging the system, Bacchus decided, coming from the Union, and he had left the Union, he decided that...
The Union, let's just be clear about this.
That's the ULA. The ULA.
ULA.
Bacchus arrives in Liberia and decides that, okay, Talbot wants change, we're going to take him up to it. He then begins to pursue the cause of trying to establish a political party. The first time, almost in the history of Liberia, that would be at least considered. It was not done during the Tubman years, and Tubman led Liberia for 27 years. So he said, fine. So he goes and he begins the process of trying to register to establish an opposition party, political party in Liberia.
Called what?
It was called, he started off as the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, and he kept it. That's what they passed, the Progressive Alliance of Liberia.
Now, how would you style Bacchus Matthews's politics?
Oh, Bacchus was, I would just put it, he was trained in the United States in the first instance, believed in democracy, free speech, free press, and the rule of law. He was a Democrat, I would say, a true Democrat.
Did you share those principles?
Bacchus and I, on so many accounts, I would say yes.
And help us, Mr. Taylor. What was and still is your attitude towards the United States?
Well, I still consider that my own roots are still buried in the United States. I still have cousins in the South. But I've always felt that, one, the United States has not been the friend that she is capable of being to Liberia. And I will expand on that. The United States and Americans are very good people. The United States in 1847, let me just come back one step. Slaves are freed from the United States. The first NGO, called the American Colonization Society, sends these slaves to West Africa, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. These free slaves are American children. In fact, the first president of Liberia, Joseph Jenkins Roberts, is the illegitimate child of Thomas Jefferson. They are thrown into Liberia. In 1847, they declared themselves a free sovereign and independent state. The United States takes 15 years before they recognize Liberia. Britain recognizes Liberia almost immediately. So from 1847, you brought these black people into West Africa. They abandoned them, left them, and from 1847 until now, Liberia, in my opinion, could have and still could be a showcase of American ingenuity and American assistance to Africa. You understand me? They failed to do that. Let's look at the colonial countries. Britain left something in Nigeria. They left a little something in Sierra Leone. The French colonized. They left something back. America, I have nothing against America. I believe America is capable, but they have failed, okay, to assist us in a way that they are still capable of doing.
But they left Firestone, Mr. Taylor.
What did Firestone do in Liberia? Firestone came in Liberia in 1925 and got 100 years, no, excuse me, I delete that. 99 years, 99 months, 99 weeks, 99 days, 99 hours, 99 seconds agreement. And they've been sitting there doing nothing. They planted. They had an agreement to do 1 million hectares in rubber. They did 240,000 hectares. And that's it. That's it.
But Mr.
That's
Taylor,
the big investment.
the Americans also built Roberts International Airfield.
Oh, well, let's get that straight. Let's get this straight. During World War II, Malaysia, the country Malaysia, did rubber, was captured by, if I'm not mistaken, Japanese forces. The Allied forces at the time needed rubber. They had Firestone done, and in order to secure that Atlantic front, they did two things. They built Roberts International Airport for military purposes to aid Allied forces in World War II, and they built the free port of Monrovia to move the rubber that was being used for tires and other things to support Allied forces during World War II. So I do not look at it just as an economic venture. I look at it as a venture of necessity, where America needed that airport along with the Allied forces. That's Roberts International Airport.
But Voice of America also had an aerial there, Mr. Taylor.
Oh, Voice of America. Well, these are for security concerns. Let's not forget what Voice of America is. Yes, Voice of America did have a relay station there, but there's more to the Voice of America story.
Can I just pause for a minute, Your Honors, and deal with the spelling? Tipote? Togba, T-O-G-B-A-H, Na, N-A-H, Tipote, T-I-P-O-T-E-H. Mr. Taylor, are you anti-American?
No, I am not and will never be anti-American. I just want America to come up to the plate. If you're going to use Liberia as your little backyard garden, well, then you do something for Liberia. And if you're going to take us through all this education and do everything, you cannot continue to overlook us. In fact, I can almost say we are like children saying, hey, you have a mother. You brought me into this world, so help. You can't stay. We're 150 some odd years old, and Liberia doesn't have a fitting highway. And all this nonsense about corruption. How do you get corrupt with what you do not have? I've heard the prosecution talking about me having the 100 million. I challenge them here now and they were before this court in Europe. Let them produce one account. Lies, rumors. So this whole thing, there's nothing in Liberia. There's not even a fitting highway there. And America is capable of doing it. And I think they should. So I could never be anti. And I dealt with America as president. God willing, if I walk out of this, I'm prepared to deal with America in whatever instance. It's just a matter of saying that, look, America, come up to the plate and do what you ought to do for Liberia, because you failed to do it in 150 years. And I challenge them to dispute it.
Mr. President, I'm about to embark on another topic, and I wondered whether that might be a convenient moment, noting the time.
Yes, I think we'll adjourn rather than you start a new topic, Mr. Griffiths. We'll adjourn for the lunch break, and we'll reconvene at 2:30.
All rise.